I think the time between my last rant and this video is probably the longest I've gone all year without making a political rant video, because I know I say this like every video, I'm really busy with a lot of shit, but this is especially true this month because, I mean, I'm doing overtime every week. I feel like I come home and I have time to like eat dinner and then do like two other things really quick and then I have to go to bed again, so there is no time to talk about politics. But so I hit over 200 subscribers recently, which I know in the grand scheme of things is no big deal. I mean, the big YouTubers have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. They gain or lose hundreds of subscribers every day, every week, so it's no big deal. But for me, a small channel, it is a big deal, especially since I hit kind of a plateau for many months during the summer when I was at 160 for a while. And I thought, oh, well, I guess it's never going to get more than that, because I don't have time to put a lot of effort and high special effects in my videos or anything. It's just me in front of a camera. So hitting 200 was a big deal. Let's see if we can get to 300. Don't know where it's going to be. So Black Patch is my go-to liquor. It tastes really good and it's really cheap, especially when it's on sale for only 10 bucks for this whole thing. Oh my god, the pop-ups. Oh my god. People, of course, call me when I'm making a video. They don't call me any other time of day. Jesus Christ. I'll put it on airplane mode if that happens again, but here's a celebratory shot to 200 subscribers. Tastes pretty good. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, there's a number of things we could talk about. The video I've been wanting to make for a long time is bashing Trump. God, do I love bashing Trump, because I hate when I go after his policies. That is my primary thing that I do on this channel, is go after policies. People making the policies too. And I hate it when the conservative media or the big conservative YouTubers characterize all criticism of Trump as just liberal autistic screeching, which a lot of it is. I will give them that. There is a lot of criticism of Trump that makes absolutely no sense, and people are nitpicking on his how he talks, his brashness, he's non-PC, he's not very polite, and they take that as the ultimate criticism of him, and that's why he should get out of the presidency. So a lot of that is, but there's some criticism of him that is not like that. They act like he is immune to criticism. Every single thing he does, they will bend over backwards and trip over themselves in order to defend his ridiculous, horrible policies. So I'm not going to talk about how he was rude to Elizabeth Warren, although that Pocahontas joke is pretty damn funny. That's a joke I would make behind closed doors. I wouldn't do that in front of cameras, in front of millions of people as president, but that's beside the point. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about his policies, how his policies are absolutely horrendous. And why criticizing him doesn't mean that you're just a whiny fag liberal. There's lots of conservatives want to characterize every single criticism of Trump as exactly that. It's just first of all, I'm not a liberal. Second of all, I actually agree with conservatives more on issues than not. If you take a look at all the big important issues facing this country, I tend to side with conservatives on most of them. So your can't talk today. Your characterization of my criticism as just liberal autistic screeching doesn't work for me. It works with other people, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't work with me. So we're just going to go through some stuff. Let's talk about his latest stupid little policy that he brought out, and that was the tax reform. Every single president touts tax reform. Every single president has at least one big tax reform bill or tax change that they do in their 4 or 8 years that they are in presidency. Unfortunately, each one is a continuation of almost the exact same economic policies. Start at the bottom. The people in poverty, the working class, the lower class. It absolutely changes absolutely nothing for them. You noticed how in all of the news articles and all of the talks that the Republicans, Democrats had in their press conferences about this tax reform never ever mentions the bottom people, the people struggling to put food on the table or struggling to get gas to go to work. Did not mention them at all. All they talked about was middle class and upper class. They do not give a shit about the lower class. They do not give a shit about the people in poverty, the people who need tax reform the most, the people who are just above the poverty line and they get 25% of their paycheck taken in federal tax, state tax, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, whatever taxes, state taxes apply to them. 25% of their entire paycheck when they are just above the poverty line. That is huge tax reform that needed to be done decades ago. It is so hard for people in poverty in the lower class to save money because they get gutted at 25%. Meanwhile, corporations, I say this so many times, Trump did not solve this problem with tax reform. Neither did Obama, neither did Bush, neither did Clinton, none of the Bush before him. They never solved this problem of taxing the poverty, people in poverty in the lower class at such a ridiculous amount. Then corporations, they get to find corporate tax loopholes. They get to find ways to evade the relatively high corporate tax that we have in this country versus like Europe, for example. They find a way to get around that. And they pay zero taxes and billions of profits. Someone who makes the poverty line is 11,000 for a single person. Let's say you make let's just say 18,000. You make $18,000 a year. You need to pay 25% of that income in the various different taxes that apply to you. Meanwhile, a corporation who makes $3 billion in profits pays zero. How is that fair? I've been asking this question for years now because I take a look at the tax brackets, take a look at the loopholes that allow the corporations to do this. Not a single person, Republican or Democrat, can answer this. Now, I know why it's in place, and lots of other people know it's in place too, but they can't do anything about it. We're not in positions of power to do with it. The reason why it's like that, the corporations pay for the political campaigns of Republicans and Democrats. They pay for them knowing that they will keep those corporate tax loopholes in place. It is the rational incentive for the people in power, the 1% of both political parties, to keep that corporate tax loophole. Why can't I say it today? To keep those loopholes in place so the corporations can benefit. So why would the corporations pay for someone to get into politics, get into power, if they're going to close that loophole? No, it benefits their donors. It benefits their campaign funders to have those corporate tax loopholes in place. It's part of the 1% helping each other out, the revolving door of business and government. The 1% help each other out, and they stay in power, and they have all these loopholes that allow them to keep all their money, and then the corporations use all that money that they save to fund the next round of politicians who do the exact same thing. And this is why it hasn't been solved for decades and decades, even though at least once throughout the presidency, every single president talks about closing the corporate tax loophole. See, I can't say it again. Every single time I stumble on it. Sorry. Every time they talk about doing that to make things fair, you know, for America, and then they end up not doing it. What a surprise. Obama campaigned on that, didn't do it. Trump flat out didn't even bother. He knew he wasn't going to do it. That would close the loopholes that his own corporations use. Why would he do that? Okay, so the tax reform that that they just passed doesn't help people in poverty, the lower class, the working class, the people who need help the most. Doesn't help them. Ironically, lots of Trump supporters. That's beside the point. Middle class, for example. Some middle class people are going to receive a tax cut throughout this tax reform. Good job. Other middle class families are not because of varying circumstances that different middle class families find themselves in. Okay, so it doesn't really seem like you did much. You helped some people, but then hurt some other people also in the same economic class. So really that just cancels each other out. That really, you didn't really help the situation most. Middle class needs help, don't get me wrong. Not as much as the people in poverty and lower class, that's why they're better off to begin with. Middle class aren't concerned about putting food on the table, putting gas in the car to get to work. They're concerned about paying for their kids' college. They're concerned about keeping the house that they're in. Stuff like that, which is not as dire, but is still very important issues for these families. And the government shouldn't be the nemesis of them able to achieve their economic goals. So we didn't help the lower class at all. Sort of helped some of the middle class, but didn't help some of them either. So cancel each other out. And then the rich, well, what a surprise! They receive huge tax breaks and are allowed to keep their loopholes. Wow, some tax reform, Trump. You really hit the nail on the head. You're really making America great again by doing the exact same thing that the past presidents for decades have done. You try to explain to a Trump supporter and they will just scream at you that you're a liberal socialist warrior retard who's artistically screeching, and they can't come up with anything more than that. That's just the latest of Trump's wonderful policies that are continuing the downward spiral this country is in. Notice that when I criticize Trump, I'm not saying that everything was peachy before he came in, like Obama was making this land a happy fantasy land where everyone was doing good and everyone was well off, and then Trump just came in here with his neo-fascism and just installed the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy in the White House. You know, that's not how it is. No, he's just doing the same thing the puppets before him were doing. So let's just go through some things real quick. Infrastructure. Wow, bridges are still crumbling, roads are still not getting built, buildings are about to collapse. Bridges are the number one thing. It's really scary when you look up the amount of bridges who are like near collapse or in dire need of repair. When has he ever talked about that? When has he ever talked about diverting more money towards that? When has he talked about ever? No, he doesn't give a shit. He does not give a shit. Why does he care about the bridges? He takes Air Force One everywhere. Why the fuck would he care? His 1% don't take the bridges. Talk about infrastructure. When's the last time you talked infrastructure? So he's not solving that problem. War on drugs hasn't solved that problem. The government is still taking away people's rights to put things on their own bodies as consenting adults. People are still getting murdered by the war on drugs. People, SWAT teams flashbang a house, jump in, shoot a person in the face because he dare smoke marijuana. That's still happening. 97% of the prison population is for nonviolent drug offenders. He's not solving that problem at all. He's wasting billions of dollars housing all these people who have committed no crime whatsoever. Still wasting billions of dollars giving all these weaponizing local police forces in order to do these the war on drugs. Completely unnecessary. Wasting money, making people afraid of the police in their own communities, not building the trust between the communities and the police, just flat out not solving any of these problems and continuing the same policies as Obama and Bush. I love how people say that Obama loved black people and did so much for black people. According to his policies, he hated black people. He accelerated the war on drugs so much more than Bush, and Bush accelerated it from Clinton, and Obama just took the baton and kept on running. So many black people were killed for daring to smoke pot in their own house, not bothering anyone under Obama. And Trump's doing the exact same thing. The national debt. Oh, I love talking about national debt. I love talking about numbers and graphs and all the other boring stuff that people don't want to talk about. I mean, it is boring, don't get me wrong. Economics is boring as hell. But we got to talk about it because money makes the world go round. Money funds the country. Without money, we can't do anything. Sorry, that's a fact of life. And Trump's tax reform does nothing to solve national debt problem. Republicans constantly say that the tax breaks that they have on the upper class and the corporations will pay for itself because now they have more money to invest in businesses and the rich people to spend because now they're not getting taxed on it. So even though the government is making less money because they are taking away less taxes, they're reducing the percentage of taxes they're taking from the upper class and the corporations. They say it's paid for itself because, first of all, there'll be more profit to tax because the corporations are making more money, so there's more money to tax further down the road. Excuse me. And then the upper class will buy more stuff because now they're not getting taxed. That'll help the economy, etc., etc. They say that every single time they pass tax cuts for the upper class and corporations, and guess what? Every single time they do that, it never works. Trickle-down economics does not work. The term was introduced in the 80s. Guess what? 30 fucking years later, 90s, 10s, 100s, yeah, 30s, 30 years plus, still doesn't work. Well, I can't believe that people have been trying this idea for longer than I've been alive and it still doesn't work, and then they still keep on thinking, hey, we should do this. How retarded do you have to be? I mean, honestly, my God, just look at the graphs. You know, I was a data analyst. All I care about are numbers. I don't care about your fee-fees, or how I feel this should happen, or whatever. Like, I don't care about intangible bullshit. I'm talking about what your policies do to the actual numbers that are running this country. And the fact is that trickle-down economics doesn't work. These tax breaks paying for themselves don't work. All these talks of, oh, these actions will cut the national debt doesn't work because you look up the graphs of the national debt and it's just like a J curve. It just keeps on going up and up and up. Nothing the politicians do solves it because they won't do the things necessary to solve it. That's an issue for another time. So Trump doesn't care about national debt. So far, he doesn't care about tax reform, doesn't care about infrastructure, doesn't care about war on drugs, doesn't care about the national debt, doesn't care about the war on terror. He's continuing the, I believe, 64 plus wars on that we are in. He's continuing to fund dictators, oligarchies, terrorist groups, funding the oppression, taking away human rights from millions and millions of people. And you wonder why people hate us across the world? No, he's continuing to do that. Obama was really good at that. He just took the playbook and like, yeah, this is awesome, let's continue with this. Continuing the wars in Afghanistan, that doesn't seem to end anytime soon. We're still in Syria and Iraq. We're still drone striking in Nigeria, Somalia, Pakistan, Yemen. we're still funding the people that we're fighting. We're giving money and weapons to Saudi Arabia, who in turn gives it to ISIS, who is attacking us, and we're still continuing with that. That makes perfect sense. Trump's looking at that like, yep, let's continue with that. It's just, how is this liberal autistic screeching? How is saying, Trump, you should stop funding the people who are attacking us and killing our soldiers? How, first of all, why does it not make sense? Why is it when I say that people just look at me and just like, we're not doing that. That doesn't make sense. Like, why would we do that? Because our government's fucking retarded and wants to continue the war on terror in order to prop up the military industrial complex, have a battlefield ripe for us to test our new weapons that were constantly being introduced in the battlefield. Without wars, how would we test these new weapons that we're constantly making? How would we test all these things that we're giving billions and billions of dollars to contractors at the Pentagon, make all these new jet fighters and all these bombs and all these new guns and everything? If we don't have 64 plus wars to test them out on, then how can the military industrial complex keep on going? It's a rational, logical viewpoint if you're in the military industrial complex, but for everyone else, looking at how much money we're spending and how much oppression and the violation of human rights that we're causing and how many deaths, not only to the civilians, but then to our soldiers and then the people who have a rational incentive to fight the government that we're propping up and to fight our own soldiers because we're oppressing them, all deaths that they're incurring. And I'm taking a look at all this and like, we shouldn't do any of this because it's all fucking retarded, and then people look at me like I'm retarded. And it's just like, everything I just described there really fast. I know I talk really fast whenever I do these videos. It's just like, how does any of that make sense if we actually want to not go into debt by constantly spending money in the military, by actually standing up for what the values that we're supposed to believe in, like human rights, democracy, when we actively fund and kill against those values? How is saying, Trump, you should do these things, how is that not valid criticism as policies? I mean, it's just, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's just beginning. He hasn't been in office a year yet. People keep saying, oh, he's going to get impeached because all of those sexual assaults that he supposedly did. Well, since they passed, you can only report rape up to 7 years or something like that, or sexual assault, like there's a certain time frame you have to do it in, and once that expires, you can't accuse anyone, you can't bring someone to court because of that. So 99%, if not all of the charges that women have filed against him, not even filed, just said that he has done against them, they can't do anything about it. So no, he's not going to get impeached because of that. He's not going to get brought down. I constantly hear rumors saying he's going to get impeached or brought down or arrested for all these things. None of that's going to happen. Okay, he's only done this for a year, and he's got 3 more to go. And based on how retarded the liberals are being lately, with most of them, hashtag not all, with most of them attacking asinine little details about how he conducts himself and not the actual policies that he implements. At this point, if the say it was 2020, the Republicans would cream them again, and they would still have control of both parts of the Senate, and then Trump would still be president, and then you have 4 more years to just continuously fuck up this country. So there it is. I listed like 6 different policies, and that was just off the top of my head. That are the biggest policies I'm concerned about that affect a lot of other policies too. That was just like the war on terror has lots of different policies, but he's wrong on like every single thing that he does about the war on terror. So what I start with? The tax reform, the war on drugs, the debt, the infrastructure, the war on terror, that's 5. I listed off the top of my head that I don't like, and I explained why I don't like them. I explained why it's bad for this country. And that's why I don't like Trump, because he does these policies. I don't like Trump because he does these policies. Why don't I like these policies? Because they do XYZ to this country, which are all bad, and XYZ to all the other countries that I mentioned, all these other different communities in the U.S., whatever, that are all bad. I don't see how that isn't rational. I don't see how that isn't logical. I don't see how this liberal autistic screeching when I am neither a liberal nor am I autistically screeching. I'm just saying, like, conservatives constantly say, don't criticize him on how he talks or on how rude or like upfront, like non-PC is. Criticism on his policies. Well, I did exactly that. That is why I will never vote for him. I will constantly make fun of him with memes because he is a horrible fucking president.